Hello guys, welcome to Big Book. Today we are going to discuss about a new topic, concept of species. The definition is the organisms in a group resemble one another in structure and interbreed freely with one another to produce fertile young ones or offsprings of progeny. By the definition itself, you would have understood that species are the one which will be having the similar structure and interbreed, and they are going to interbreed freely. For example, human beings, a kind of species where these Homo sapiens are having a structure, a similar structure, and they interbreed freely within a population, and they're going to stand as a fertile reproducers. Their fertile young ones will be produced, or offsprings or progenies will be produced which are fertile. Coming to the next slide, there can be the other definitions also. Species or groups of interbreeding natural population. It is very comprehensively given, that is species or groups of interbreeding natural population. It is as similar to the previous explanation. So that are reproductively isolated from other groups. Reproductively isolated from other groups means, for example, if you are going to consider the mammals, the Homo sapiens, and the other form of the macaca mulata, that is the monkeys. These are two different species where these species are reproductively isolated from each other. So here these populations are in the natural form. These are the natural populations, but these are reproductively isolated. In the similar manner, there are many other form of the spiders and also many other form of the cockroaches also found. So those will be reproductively isolated, where the genetic material will not be exchanged among the two different populations due to the separate population depending upon the ecosystem. So a species is the basic unit of taxonomy. So here basic unit in the sense, in the taxonomical hierarchy we have around 7 positions. First position is the kingdom, second is the phylum, third is the class, fourth is the order, fifth is the family, sixth is the genus, seventh is the species. Now here 7th position stands to be as the basic unit, because here if we are going to identify this species, that is the specimen that is going to stand as the specimen for us to study its genus, family, order, class, phylum, or the division, and the kingdom. If we have this species, then we will be able to identify it structural similarities with the other organisms which are present in the natural population. Then only we will be able to identify to which genus this species is going to be adopted. Either it is going to be similar to any of the natural population present already identified, or it is a new one which has been identified further. So next is the members belonging to one particular species have similar gene pool. Yes, of course, if we are going to consider the human population is having a particular gene pool. Under this also a gene pool is to a particular population. For example, Indian constitution, it is having a particular gene pool because of the interbreeding. Here this gene pool can be breeded with the other continents also, where the exchange of the genetic material can take place. But here if when you are going to consider the gene pool is going to exhibit the similar characters of that similar kind of the organism. So here members belonging to one particular species have similar gene pool, that is the total number of genes in a particular population found at a given period of time. So next is the 3 important features to identify a species are as follows: reproductively isolated, ecologically isolated, genetically isolated. So here you would have understood that for a species to be separated from the other group of organisms, it should have these three particular unit isolations, that is the reproductive isolation, ecological isolation and genetical isolation. Reproductive isolation is a particular species constitute a reproductive community where members interbreed and produce fertile offspring. So here, for example, if you are going to consider in cockroaches or else in the Drosophila, there is a particular community where they are going to constitute a particular reproductive or the exchange of the gametes or the exchange of genetic material will take place. Even this kind of the feature is seen in the spiders also. So here that is going to constitute a particular species with the form of the reproductive community where members interbreed and produce fertile offsprings. Next slide is ecological isolation. Species always act separately as a unit with other species between the ecosystems. So here ecosystem is, you already know that in ecosystem, due to the food chain, the species is going to live and they are going to reproduce to form a population, that is the natural population, where they are going to reproduce or by interbreeding. With the help of that interbreeding, the natural population is going to form. So here that interbreeding has caused a particular ecological isolation where this has led to the particular separate species. So other is the genetic isolation. Members of a species will act as a separate genetic unit as they possess similar gene pools. So here this one you would have understood that due to the particular interbreeding of a natural population, the genetic isolation will appear from the other group of organisms. So here this genetic isolation is going to give a separate or the different kind of the gene exhibitions or expressions due to which the isolation of the species is going to take place. Next is the widely accepted concept is genetic one, which considers the reproductive isolation. So this sentence or the phrase is depending on the previously discussed all three kind of the isolations. But there is a one kind of the question here that reproductive isolation is only applicable for 1 out of the 10,000 of species. So there are more than 10,000 number of species in the natural population, but 1 out of it can hold good this reproductive isolation, but the rest organisms will not hold good for this reproductive isolation or the genetic isolation. So here reproductive isolation cannot be applied particularly in plants, as interbreeding in a population breaks down and cross-pollination leads to evolution. Here only morphological similarities can be considered to distinguish the species. Now here you can understand that, for example, in the plants, to interbreeding is very less compared to the cross-pollination, that is the pollination can happen between the two different species also, and it can give rise to a new kind of the fertile progeny. So this leads to the evolution. Here because of this, only because of the morphological similarities can be considered to distinguish the species. So here because of that consideration, both genetical and morphological characters can also be included during the identification of a species. So coming to the next slide, the definition for this species can be as an active group of organisms resembling each other in their structure and life history, shares common gene pool, interbreeds freely under natural conditions to produce fertile offsprings. So here the every aspect of the organism has been included. That is the structure of the organism, that is the physical appearance of the organisms, and the life history. That is the life history is related to the particular immigration and emigration also, and the cross breeding or the interbreeding, and shares common gene pool. Okay, how far they are sharing the common gene pool, where they are going to be having a freely interbreeding population under the natural conditions to produce fertile offspring. So if you are going to consider structure and life history, that is commonly can be referred to the plants and the other organisms which are not in the interbreeding position. That is, they are not only in the interbreeding position, whereas the shares common gene pool refers to the interbreeding freely under natural condition population to produce fertile offspring. So guys, thank you for watching this video. Further we will come with a new topic in the forthcoming videos. Thank you for watching Big Book. Be tuned on YouTube. Thank you.